Hello and welcome to Conversations. I'm Jim Blow, your host. Very pleased to have joining me today Ann Arbor Public School Superintendent Jeanice Swift. Welcome back to Conversations.
Well, thank you. It's great to be here.
And we've often met at the beginning of the school year. We are now about 2 months into the new 2017-18 school year. When students, parents, and teachers came back in September, what did they find different? I mean, were there major changes or shifts over the summer that they came to?
Well, we did welcome our students and families back to some pretty exciting changes. And some of those were perhaps not as noticeable, things like a $3.8 million project to improve the sidewalks and the steps and the entryways.
So they could actually make it to the school.
Yes, exactly. And some of them were more obvious, and that was, for example, enhancing our classroom furniture so that it is well suited to kind of 21st century collaborative learning. And so 14,000 pieces of new furniture delivered over this summer.
At all different, you could say, grade levels or school buildings, from elementary all the way through the high schools?
We actually worked last spring and over this summer with kinder through 8th grade.
Okay.
And high school will be following over this coming year and next summer.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you do sort of are able to address, you could say, all of one level, so as opposed to one elementary school or one middle school getting preferential treatment or something like that.
Right.
Addressing the needs of the whole district at a given level.
We are rolling that furniture up and through our system.
And that is all part of what, a bond issue that was approved how many years ago now?
So that was the 2015 bond, and it was achieved at no additional levy to the taxpayer. We took advantage of those historically low interest rates, and we were able to get new buses. So we're now 66 brand new buses, and so we're about halfway through that project. We need about 120 buses overall. They have all the newest safety equipment, GPS, everything you would expect. Yes.
And so that is all part, and that bond proposal approval goes through how many more years is there money being collected based on that approval?
Well, we are hoping to wrap this up in the next couple of years. We have one more payment on that bond, and we are in the process. 5,000 brand new musical instruments are in the hands of students. You know, we're a rich arts-infused education experience district, and so our students have brand new instruments coming, brand new pianos, baby grand pianos and regular pianos in every one of our schools. So we're very excited.
Right, and one of the things is for the basic operation of the school, that is, you could say, primarily funded by the state and the amount of money per pupil within a district. But then the special, you could say, needs, whether it be construction or improvements or rehabilitation of buildings, can be done if the voters approve additional tax dollars. And the Ann Arbor Public School District has generally been supportive of that.
They have done so. We take that honor very seriously, and we never take it for granted. But we do see the demonstrated need. For example, our average age of our buildings is approaching 65 years old, and so we do have a lot of infrastructure work, not unlike Michigan and across the country. It's just a good time to renew infrastructure.
And you mentioned the infrastructure because often that is not as sellable, let's say, it's not like a new building, it's not visual necessarily.
Right.
But whether it be the water, the plumbing, the electricity, one of the big issues this past fall as we opened up the school year was air conditioning.
Absolutely.
Because of the heat. And at times that's more difficult to convince voters to support because it's not something they can sort of put their hands on.
And yet it's very important for the look of the neighborhood, for the function of the school, for students and families. We see our schools as the center of the neighborhood where students gather and where families come to share time in the neighborhood. So for example, the refurbishment, renewal of every one of our elementary and K-8 playgrounds.
Okay.
We just see that as a very important component of a robust and vibrant neighborhood in Ann Arbor.
And you mentioned that because that, you say, overlaps in certain ways with the city.
It does.
That for many residents, there's not a clear distinction between, you say, the city parks and the public school playground.
Yes.
And is there coordinated cooperation with the city parks and with the city on whether it be improvements or the maintenance of and usage of open land?
We do have a great partnership with the city, and I value our work with Howard Lazarus, the city manager, with the city council, Mayor Taylor. We really do have a good partnership, and our land does often border, and it's not always sure which is the schools and which is the cities, but they make for beautiful woods and beautiful natural areas for our children and our citizens to enjoy.
And that's one thing with the public schools. People often view the public school, you say, playgrounds as being more active areas, where often the more natural areas where it's also nice to be able to take elementary through upper school, high school kids on nature walks. And,
that's right.
And that coordination with the city and making it all possible.
Exactly. We're very fortunate in Ann Arbor to have beautiful natural surroundings, and we do have our children use those. We explore them, and we have quite a number of woods in the city as well. So yes. You
mentioned some budgetary items, and that the state provides what, for the case of Ann Arbor, is it just over $9,000 per pupil?
It is. It is. We are almost up to where we were in 2003.
Right.
So so we've been on this wild and unfortunate ride through the recession. We're coming up and not quite where we were in 2003.
And yet, compared to the early 2000s, what is the student population? In other words, how many students do we have today compared to, say, 15 years ago?
We've grown by about 1,200 students. And if you think about just the value and hourly salaries and the cost of materials, electricity, water, everything you need, it's been a challenge to continue to offer quality programming at the rate that we're funded.
In working with the Board of Trustees, the school board, your responsibility is directly to them, and then they are directly responsible back to the voters. So you are indirectly going to, you have to please the parents, the students, the board, a wide group of constituents.
Yes.
In the case of the budget, do you propose it to the board? Do they give you direction? How does that all get put together based on what you anticipate to be the state funding?
Right. Well, we're working along two parallel pathways with the budget. One is to be out in the community. Jim, we're on a tour right now out in the community doing fall updates and visiting with folks about what they'd like to see in their district. We're doing that while we're also monitoring state funding, what the legislature is up to, and really what it looks like in terms of approaching the next fiscal year. Our CFO and our assistant superintendent is busy with the analysis. And then as we come into spring, we will partner with the community and with the Board of Trustees, and we will author a budget.
You mentioned the working with the community and meeting with them to get sort of a sense of what they would like to see the district provide.
Yes.
When your funding is limited as far as being able to, you say, do more, to what degree is there discretionary spending? Or what percent of your budget goes to, say, faculty and staff salaries, benefits, which is a fixed cost, which you really can't play around with each year?
No. So we're getting ready for the audit. This is a great time for this conversation. We're running about 89% of our budget is staff. Education is a people-rich endeavor. It takes folks to make that happen, and quality professionals.
Right.
So, so we do have to be very strategic.
And then you
in how
have
we
things
plan.
like electricity and
Yes.
those costs, which
Yes.
in a sense you don't control.
Right.
You can influence by how long you leave the lights on, or
We can.
how high of a temperature you set.
That's right.
I guess my bottom line is you really have very limited funds for what might be considered discretionary income. So all the grandiose plans that the neighbors and the citizens may want you to do, realistically, as long as the state says you can't on your own go out and ask for more funding for basic operation,
But
you're limited.
We do have our limitations, and we recognize those. I'm really proud of the program that Ann Arbor Public Schools continues to offer, despite the downturn. And the arts-infused education that we offer is not available anywhere that I know of to the level that we have it in the Ann Arbor Public Schools. So I feel like we still have retained, and we've been able to partner with our community on referenda to just ensure that we're keeping the Ann Arbor Public Schools student-focused and a rich arts-infused whole child education.
We're going to take a short break,
Sure.
come back and look at some of your sort of goals and looking more to the future as far as both short and long term, how the district in your mind is going to be looking in the future. Ask our viewers to stay with us. We'll be back in just a moment. Hello, welcome back to Conversations. I'm speaking today with Ann Arbor Public Schools Superintendent Jeanice Swift, and looking over the fact that we're now near the end of October into the 2017-18 school year. What do you have any specific goals, or what can people look forward to between now and the end of this school year? Let's look just over the next 9 months. just continue to do what we've been doing so well?
Well, our hope, particularly with this school year, Jim, is to provide additional wraparound supports to our students with
Meaning?
social emotional
Okay.
supports. So we are focused on that, just really understanding the importance that children need to have support in order to do well at school.
What does that look like? Other than it sounds like almost the 60s again, you know?
Yeah. So what it looks like is that when we notice that a child is struggling, that we are making those connections, either right there at school to a counselor, to a social worker, or perhaps to one of our partners in the community beyond the school. So we're very excited that we do have a whole child approach in the Ann Arbor Public Schools, and we recognize more and more the importance of ensuring those needs are met.
And I would assume much of that falls on the classroom teacher to be able to observe and to notice whether it be changes or comments that might be made. Specialized training for faculty and staff, or how do they, identify this child who's in need?
Well, we do see it as a partnership, and we see it as a partnership between home and school, and even with that child to self-identifying, to let us know. But certainly our teachers, there's no better eye than the watchful eye of a master educator to know how the child is doing. We also invite our parents to reach out if they're noticing a change in the child.
And I would hope also in some cases if there's a change at home or a change in the family situation, there may be, you say, realistic reason to have the parent notify the teachers, notify the school,
right.
to, sort of a heads up, just be aware of that.
Right. It is about a strong home to school connection. You're exactly right.
You mentioned the wraparound, but another aspect of, you could say, support and safety for the child is nationally all the different efforts and concerns about, you could say, the safety of getting from home to school, and then within the school, the safety. What has Ann Arbor Public Schools done in that respect, and what are things that we can look forward to in support of the whole system and district, providing that kind of physical support?
I'm really glad you brought that up, because we are focused last year and again this year even more so on that safety in transportation, in pedestrian, in biking in the city. We have strong partnership with the city, and in fact just met today with our City Transportation Safety Committee, and we have great partnership to analyze traffic around our schools and to make sure that the posted speed limits, we've reduced those in many areas, so folks need to be aware of that as they're out driving around. Getting the proper lighting. Some areas around our schools need additional lighting. The flashing lights for pedestrian. We're also on an education campaign connecting with the city's A2B Safe campaign, so that students and parents and community members are even more mindful of those areas around our schools.
I would say that I noticed the speed limit, and partly a result of injury and death that has occurred from pedestrians, but also bicyclists. Of both the crosswalks being highlighted more and that. But the buildings themselves, that nationally there's been more and more focus on how do we protect students once they're inside the building. Are all district schools now locked at a given time, or is there limitations on access to buildings, and how is that ensured?
Well, we do limit the access to buildings. We do ask that visitors check in at the front office. We are watchful and mindful. In schools, we hold the most valuable treasure in our community, and that's our children. We're also working this fall to oppose a couple of pieces of legislation that are coming through that would allow weapons holders to bring them into school. We're working on that endeavor as well.
And looking now as far as more general things, by let's say June, graduation and end of the school year. When does the school year end this year?
I believe we're mid-June, yes.
And the reason I ask is that just recently I remember seeing, notice that I think it's Celine that's going to request the
Yes.
ability to start before Labor Day.
They are.
Has that been discussed in Ann Arbor and the whole calendar and how best to educate students in that respect?
Well, we'll be asking again this year when
Okay.
we're out on tour. So far, our parents have not lobbied for an extended calendar, but we are mindful of that. We'll continue that
I
conversation.
say it's not necessarily extending as it is being able to moving everything up. So people are now accustomed, I think, to ending the school year early June as opposed to late June.
Yes.
And realistically, the only way to do that is to either eliminate holidays, which they don't want to do,
Right.
or start as you
early.
said before, because often by athletics begin first week of August, so they're
Yes.
back anyways.
Yes.
And some argument is you might as well have them in classrooms in that.
Yes.
And how is a decision made on whether or not a school district is allowed to start early? Do you know? Is it the state board that?
It is a state decision, and it's the Department of Education that kind of monitors that and makes a decision as to whether the reasoning is tied, as I understand it, to learning, or whether it's some other reason.
Some other reason.
Yes.
Okay. So all right. So by the end of the year, we're going to have great students coming out. Looking 1 to 3 years down the road, do you have your committee or your group within the administration sort of anticipating whether it be issues or what things that you want to look at more the medium term?
So we are focused on continuing to improve the quality program that we're able to offer our students. I'll be out in the community having those discussions with parents and community members. On the flip side of that coin, we'll also really be looking at our historic schools for rehabilitation, restoration, and enhancement, as well as the majority of our schools that were built in the 60s and 70s. We'll be looking at those as well.
You don't want to have happen to more schools what happened to Allen with the water and being forced into renovation.
Exactly.
But more planned, sort of structured efforts.
And we'll be over at Allen soon to dedicate that project.
yeah.
It is beautiful, beautifully restored. It is enhanced. We added air conditioning into that property and beautiful
The whole building?
finish out. The entire building is air conditioned.
Is that something that all of, and I won't say all of a sudden, but as renovations are occurring, that more and more air conditioning and those things where it would have been nice 20 years ago, but I don't think was realistically looked at.
Yeah, so it does allow us to plan for year-round programming. And in the case of Allen, we did not have air-conditioned sites along that side of town. Very much opportunity there. So we're delighted now that at Allen we have that. And I'll share with you, Jim, as you well know, more and more there are days of heat that make it really helpful. And as we do things more efficiently nowadays, we're excited about
And I wonder to what extent also it's more and more you sort of limit, as you say, the access from the outside. So the windows, doors are not opened up. You don't get as much, you could say, natural movement of air, so the air conditioning becomes another way. And as you mentioned, many of us view public schools as sort of a September to June usage, where there really is late into the evening, 10 o'clock or later, all summer potentially. That is not just the 8 to 3, 8 to 4 time period.
No, our children want to have access 24/7, and we're serving their needs.
And the community.
You
have the adult education.
and adult ed. We're very busy many days of the week, every day of the week, in most every building that we have.
In your 5th year now, right?
Yes.
What has been the most frustrating sort of area that you've not really been able to, you could say, do as much as you would like to see done, that you're still sort of looking at and working on?
Well, we are always working on ensuring that our local community schools are about our community. So we will continue to monitor both at the state level and at the federal level to ensure that we're advocating for what our community wants in the Ann Arbor public schools.
Well, one of the issues that historically Ann Arbor has looked at is it's been viewed and referred to in different ways, the educational gap between students based on economic and social conditions.
Yes.
And over the years, it's been addressed in different ways. Is that still something that is a concern and something you're still working on? And how do you see the district working in the achievement gap concern?
So equity and opportunity and access are at the heart of everything we do with teaching and learning. We believe that every child deserves a quality education. So we're really focused on enhancing programming at the early childhood level. We're expanding Young Fives. You know, we welcomed 300 Young Five students, and that's up from just 30 just 4 years ago. So we have a lot of progress made on that. We're also looking at quality programming like International Baccalaureate, like Project Lead the Way, which is now in every one of our schools in the district, really ensuring that every child has rich opportunities that abound, connecting them to a passion, because we find once a child gets turned on to a passion, they're going to grow and develop.
And in looking at that, as far as how now are so achievement measured? I mean, we've gone back and forth on testing and what test to use, and is it legitimate, and you know, is the test itself biased?
Sure.
How do we now measure both development and achievement?
So we're looking at growth. We're looking at where a child begins and their progress along the way. And if children are growing and achieving, and we're being mindful of those disparities that may come as a result of poverty or as a result of language, we're watching those things as a result of race or or special needs. We're monitoring those and ensuring that we provide more support when students need that additional support.
And somewhat similar to what you were talking about earlier as far as the wraparound and providing that.
Yes, real-time support for children.
You've mentioned a couple times the community and working with community. If someone in the community saw this and wanted to contact you or contact your office, what's the best way for a citizen to be able to do it if they're not able to make a meeting or they hear about the meeting after the fact?
Beautiful. Reach out to swift@a2schools.org. It's that simple, swift@a2schools.org. And we would love to also have them go onto our website. We broadcast on social media our reports to the board. You don't have to watch the whole board meeting. We also live stream.
Rather exciting, though.
Yeah, it is exciting. We're on Twitter. I'm at A2 Schools Super, at A2 Schools Super, and also at A2 Schools. So just reach out to us through social media, through Facebook, through our YouTube channel.
A2schools.org would get you started in that sense.
If they Google A2 Schools, they'll find us.
Right, great. And any final things as we wrap up as far as what you would like the people to sort of be able to say that they saw by the end of, let's say, I won't say this calendar year because that's only a couple of months, but by the end of the school year that they can say Ann Arbor schools have accomplished this?
Well, our vision is that every child will feel welcomed and supported in every one of our 32 schools. And we feel like, Jim, in this day and age in which we live, having a warm and welcoming and open embrace for every child, each and every child, on each and every day of school. That is the promise we make and the promise we deliver.
Well, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. It's great to be with you.
Great.
Thank you.
I want to thank our viewers for joining us and look forward to your continued support here on Conversations. Thank you.